Frequent target of Donald Trump, Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly came under fire after the first Republican debate when she asked Trump about his history of calling women a variety of names. Now, the next day, Trump hit back hard in an interview with CNN's Don Lemon.
You know, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever.
Well, for the better part of the next 9 months, Trump and his supporters slammed Megyn Kelly on Twitter. She was called bimbo. Donald Trump retweeted that, and worse, she got death threats, had to hire a security detail. In other words, she became part of the story in a way no journalist ever wants to be. Now in her new book, Settle for More, she's sharing new details about all of this and more. I spoke to Megyn this afternoon. I got to start with talking about the debates. That first question that you asked in the first debate, you had worked on it, and your team had worked on it, obviously, for a long time. Did you know what it was going to set off? Did you know what would follow?
I don't think I could have ever imagined what would come after that question. I knew he probably wouldn't like it, right? Because Trump had already shown himself to be a little sensitive to, tough questions.
He had already called you up.
We had had a tough exchange on the Monday before that Thursday debate. He was angry about a segment I had done the prior week involving his divorce from Ivana Trump.
Right, allegations that she had made during that divorce.
Right. She was claiming back in that divorce that he had raped her. She recanted those allegations fully. And then the Daily Beast did a story reviving it that prior week. And I put on the Daily Beast reporter to give him a hard time about, it's 30 years old. She recanted. What are you doing? Well, Trump didn't like it getting any airtime at all. And he called me. He insisted that I call him the Monday before that Thursday debate. And when I did, it did not go well.
You say in the book that he threatened you.
He did. So he was very angry that I'd aired that segment. And, I said, look, I did you a favor. Nobody was even telling the other side of that. They were just accepting this as a relevant story. He didn't see it that way. And ultimately, I said, look, Mr. Trump, you don't control the editorial in the Kelly file. And that was it. He said, that's it. You're a disgrace. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. And then he said, oh, I almost unleashed my beautiful Twitter account against you, and I still may. And that was 4 days before the presidential debate, at which I knew I was going to open with a tough question about women, not about Ivana Trump, but about women. So, going in, I had some nerves because I had a feeling he wouldn't like it, but I had to do my job.
I want to play that moment just for not that every viewer in the world doesn't see it already, but let's just play that.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't. Your Twitter account...
Thank you.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure.
You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees.
Honestly, Megyn, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that.
Looking at it now, what do you think?
What I thought in the moment, which was that was a veiled threat, and I understood why he was suggesting I hadn't been nice to him. And I figured at the time maybe he's going to come after me a bit on Twitter, and that'll be that. I mean, this is in part the nature of our jobs. Sometimes politicians are unhappy with our coverage, and you have to take it. So that's what I thought was going to happen. He's beaten up on me pretty good in the days after that debate, and then it just started to take on a different tone, and it started to just have different words. And by the following night, he was on with Don Lemon and made those blood comments, and that just changed everything in the debate. I went to the beach to be with my husband and my kids later that night. I saw Don that night. Normally, I'm not watching him. I love Don, but I saw him that night because we pre-taped the Kelly file, and Trump had insisted that he go on at 9 o'clock on CNN across from me. You guys let him go on commercial-free for 30 minutes, and we still beat you. Not you, it was Don. And that's when he made those comments. So I got in the car to go to the beach after that, and I was looking through my phone, and just the internet lost its mind over those comments. And I see these politicians tweeting out, I stand with Megyn. It was like, what the, the presidential candidates and just things would never be the same again. It was just a
You
it was a
ended up
game
with
changer.
security. I mean, you had to even go to Disney World, I think, with your family. You had to have a security.
We had security guards the whole year. I mean, the threat level just got so high that it was impossible not to take that seriously. And, you know, it's not like I was walking around actively believing that somebody was going to necessarily try something, but it was high enough that we had to take it seriously.
Well, you write about it in the book that a Fox executive actually said something to the Trump campaign about, you know, it would not be good for you if Megyn Kelly is killed.
So Michael Cohen, who is Trump's top lawyer and an executive vice president with the Trump Organization, had retweeted, "Let's gut her," about me at a time when the threat level was very high, which he knew. And Bill Shine, an executive vice president at Fox, called him up to say, "You got to stop this. Like, we understand you're angry, but this is, you know, she's got 3 little kids. She's walking around New York, really." And he didn't much care. And what Bill Shine said to Michael Cohen was, "Let me put it to you in terms you can understand. If Megyn Kelly gets killed, it's not going to help your candidate."
The fact that an executive at your company, though, I mean, that's an actual thought, you know, that's out there, a real concern is incredibly telling.
Well, listen, there's no question that some of the tactics engaged in by those supporting, you know, Team Trump were questionable. You know, Michael Cohen did that. Corey Lewandowski specifically threatened me if I showed up at the second debate hosted by Fox News, which our executive vice president said back to him, "Knock it off. You don't threaten our reporter. She will be there." And that was the one that Trump skipped. And, you know, it went on from there. I mean, even as recently as right before Donald Trump won, his online social media guy issued another threat saying, "Wait till you see what happens to her after this election." But
You took that as a threat, as a personal threat, or as a professional threat?
listen, I don't take it that serious. It's Trump's golf caddy who now runs his online services, right? So I was like, he's trying to get my attention, I guess. But the point is, these are not your normal tactics that we see in a presidential race unleashed against a journalist who asked a tough question.
I don't think it would have made any difference, but some, in reading the book, have criticized you for not revealing all of this, that conversation you had with Trump before, where, you know, he talked about unleashing his beautiful Twitter on you, kind of holding on to that until the book came out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it would have made any difference?
No. I mean, do you think if the Access Hollywood tape didn't make a difference and the 12 female accusers didn't make a difference and the Khan family and Judge Curiel, none of that mattered, that he mentioned his beautiful Twitter account was going to be a game changer? You know, my approach in this was I wanted to be honest, so I had revealed that I had received some death threats and that I had a guard and, you know, that the level was getting a little dangerous. But I didn't want to make it any more about me. You know, Trump kept trying to make the story about me, and the story was about him and ultimately Hillary Clinton, but in the early days, him and the other Republicans. I write in the book, in Settle for More, that I felt like a human being who had been dropped into a shark tank. And there were passersby looking in, slightly horrified at what was going on. And all I wanted to do last year was get myself out of the shark tank. And it was not going to help to chum up the waters more with, and he did this, and he did this, and here's my reaction to that. I didn't want to be the story. Even when he was making the comments, the blood comments, the other things, we didn't even cover it on the Kelly file. Just didn't even want to touch it.
Journalistically, it's a difficult position because on the one hand, these are facts which, you know, might persuade a viewer or at least inform a viewer, or it's just part of the historical record. The flip side of it is journalistically, you don't want to be the story. You don't want to be.
Exactly. And I think journalistically it wasn't a hard call for me because this isn't like someone came to me and said, "I want to tell you something that happened between me and Donald Trump." This is me. You know, we're under no obligation to report our own personal experiences just because we also happen to be journalists. In that regard, we're sort of half private citizen where it's up to us whether we want to reveal our personal stories.
More of my conversation with Megyn Kelly ahead tonight, including this. I lost my dad when I was 10. Your dad died when you were a sophomore in high school. And I hadn't realized that until I read the book. But I'm wondering, that loss, did it shape the person you are now? Did it change the person you were?
There are parts about her career path and her role in our own struggles as the networks face in an internal investigation. That's all been covered on show after show. I really thought the most interesting part was where she revealed she's been a victim of bullying by a presidential candidate, but first as a child.
I had some bullying when I was in elementary school, but then what really happened was I moved, and my 7th grade year was really a full year of bullying, and it was brutal. I mean, it was a form of torture, where I belonged to a group of girls, and then one day, for no apparent reason, the group turned, and I had no friends. I mean, I had no friends. I had nobody to talk to. They would shoot spitballs at me. They would try to trip me. They would make fun of me. They would mock my weight, and they would mock my skin, which was not good at the time. And I would go home and I would just cry at night. I was so alone, and I felt so unlikable. And, you know, it was 1982, 1983, so it's like this was not the age of helicopter parenting, where the parents would have been all up in there and the guidance counselor would have been. I mean, I went to the guidance counselor and nothing happened. And it wasn't until the end of the year when a beautiful angel named Heather Shepard, Kelly was my good friend. She was my lifelong best friend. But Heather Shepard threw me a line and sat with me, and my mom always said, all you need is one. And she was right, but I'll tell you, Shepard, that to this day, that bullying, it affects my coverage as a news person. It affects how I see stories. You know, it affects how I approach stories and even what stories we decide to put in the show every night.
And then Donald Trump bullied you.
Well, I had some familiar. When it started happening with Trump, I was like, this is familiar. Okay, I've been through this before. And so, you know, it's always good to find a silver lining, but I would say that that was one. I had already experienced a year of bullying, and there was something to fall back on.
Then when Trump did it, you knew what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I always take a little issue with the notion that he bullied me, because I think the technical definition of bullying is somebody tries to strong-arm you into compliance and then you comply. And so I feel like it was an attempted bullying.
Attempted bullying?
Yeah, because he never got me to comply, right?
The definition that I have from Google is a person who uses strength or power to harm or intimidate those who are weaker. He certainly tried to bully.
There you go. So that's my point. So I was not intimidated. Listen, I was scared at times for my safety, and there were some tearful nights, but I never changed my coverage because of his threats or his attention. And that was a real test of me and my team here at Fox News, all of whom stood shoulder to shoulder, and we just had this motto. It comes from the movie Braveheart. You know the movie Braveheart, where they're holding those sticks, and the horses are coming, the cavalry's coming, and Braveheart just keeps saying, hold, hold. And that's what my team and I were saying as all the attacks were coming in, and demands for a boycott, and demands that I be fired, and demands that I be removed from the debate team. It was hold.
Why did he do that?
We knew we could get through it.
Why did he do it?
You're going to have to take that up with Dr. Phil. I don't know. I don't really understand. All I know is he told me he was genuinely angry. He was angry all those months about, in particular, that debate question, and he didn't like what he was seeing on my show night after night. He thought it was unfair to him.
And then you had the Trump Tower discussion,
yep,
which I know was sort of off the record, so you can't talk about the details of it. But when it was over, how did you feel?
Relieved. You know, I write in the book, Settle for More, that it felt like being a hostage, being seen by her hostage taker for the first time, and being hopeful that he would finally let her go. You know, it was just, I didn't ask him to stop the bullying. I didn't apologize to him, which is what he had been demanding, nor did he apologize to me. But we had such a pleasant exchange, I felt certain he would stop. And he did.
Surviving the bullying is something that you've clearly done. It's something that clearly was a theme within this book. And you said regarding bullying in this book on page 38, you said, to this day, I can handle people who are dumb, lazy, or generally annoying. The one thing I cannot and will not tolerate is a bully. Mm-hmm. Will you be able to tolerate Donald Trump, the bully, as president?
Well, I feel
as a woman?
I feel like I now have more experience in dealing with Donald Trump and his attacks on the media than pretty much anybody. So I have a lot of practice in dealing with him when he comes after the media. With respect to me, as I say, I think we're good. But he goes after journalists in a way I don't think we've seen any modern American president do. You know, we had a young embed who was 20 who said to me, I'm afraid they were throwing tomatoes the other day. And she said, what should I do if they throw tomatoes at me? And I said, stand tall. Stand tall.
Tolerate the bullying.
If it's like a shoe, duck. But, you know, if it's a tomato, I think you make a point because you're standing tall for all of us. And there were points this past year where that's how we felt on the Kelly file, that it didn't matter how much incoming he tried to throw our way or some of his most ardent supporters did. We were going to do good journalism come hell or high water. And both came at various points of the year, but we emerged fine. You know, our ratings are fine. They're very strong, in fact. And I think honest people understood that he's an interesting kind of candidate who is running a different kind of race, including coming after the media.
Settle for More by Megyn Kelly. It's about a middle-class girl who grew up to be a powerful and famous newscaster and everything in between. A small-town girl who, as she puts it, settled for more. The next leader of Senate Democrats promising a sharper-edged economic message after last week's big election losses. Democrats voted today for New York's Chuck Schumer to take over as minority leader. Not really a surprise. He's been way up there on the leadership ladder. He'll replace the Nevada Senator Harry Reid, who, as you probably know, is retiring. Democrats also giving the Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders a leadership post as chair of party outreach. During his presidential campaign, Senator Sanders won big support from working-class voters who also came out in big numbers for President-elect Trump. In the House, Nancy Pelosi says she wants to stay on as minority leader. No one's really challenged her yet, but one congressman says he's thinking about it, and members have pushed back leadership elections until after Thanksgiving, and that is not a good sign for Leader Pelosi. Mike Emanuel live on Capitol Hill. What's the latest on a possible challenger, Mike?
Well, Shep, it sounds like a congressman from Ohio is eager to challenge Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi fired a warning shot today, writing a letter to colleagues saying, quote, "As of this writing, I am pleased to report the support of more than 2/3 of the caucus. Yet a congressman from Ohio says there needs to be at least a new approach."
This blue wall that was the firewall for the Democratic Party collapsed on election night. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, almost Minnesota, we're all lost. We need 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 members of Congress from each of those states, and we got to talk about these lunch bucket issues.
Senate Democratic leadership will expand under Chuck Schumer's leadership, adding 3 new members: Bernie Sanders from Vermont, Wisconsin's Tammy Baldwin, and West Virginia's Joe Manchin. So right there you see an effort to get a little more rural, Midwestern, and Rust Belt as Democrats try to move on from this 2016 election. Shep?
What's the Senate Majority Leader saying now about how he'll move forward with the Trump agenda?
Well, he didn't want to get into a whole lot of details. He says the Senate will deliver on what the American people want. Didn't want to talk much about his conversations with the president-elect's team, but he says it's time to move on from the election and get back to work.
Look, I think it's time for the election to be over. Time to accept the results of the election, to lower the tone, and to see what we can do together to make progress for the country.
And McConnell sounds eager to wrap up this lame duck session of Congress, noting with a new president and new Congress, 2017 is likely to be a very busy year. Shep?
Mike Emanuel in the echo chamber known as the Rotunda. Thank you. Ahead, why scam artists may actually be trying to get their hands on your cell phone number. As it turns out, those 10 digits may open up a door into your whole life. We'll see what criminals can actually do with nothing else but your phone number.
And just getting breaking news in now over the wires. It came out earlier today that Senator Ted Cruz went to Trump Tower and had a meeting there with President-elect Trump, excuse me, in New York. And now the national political reporter Jennifer Jacobs for Bloomberg is reporting scoop. That's how she's put it. Trump is discussing Ted Cruz for AG, for Attorney General. Ooh. That's interesting. Not confirmed yet by Fox, but a possibility. So why don't we ask somebody who might be in a position to know? Fox News contributor, who's a man who supported Mr. Trump through thick and thin for 6 months at least, Governor Mike Huckabee. And you used to run for president with both of these guys. It was something you all did together, well, even though you were against one another. And you tell me whether you think there's any chance Donald Trump is considering Ted Cruz for AG.
It would be a big shock to me. I know we all ran together, but there was never like a big group hug that involved Ted Cruz, so I would be very, very surprised if that were the case. But look, this election has been full of surprises, so it's Donald Trump's decision to make, and I'm sure he'll make it when he wants to.
Do you think Ted Cruz would be a good choice for AG?
You know, he certainly served in an attorney general's office in Texas as the solicitor general, so he's got that experience. He's a brilliant constitutional lawyer. He has many of the gifts, and And quite frankly, I think that there are certain members of the Republican Senate, that would be happy to confirm him because he wouldn't be in the Senate. And they haven't been that happy with him being there.
That's a backhanded compliment, I guess, but anything is
possible.
possible.
No, I'm just saying they'll give him a unanimous consent, and the Democrats will vote for him.
He's not the most popular senator, that's clear, among his colleagues. All right, we'll continue to watch that, but let's talk about Hillary, because now we had President-elect Trump promising that he's going to put her in jail. You've got several congressional investigations going on, or at least one looking into her and others who are interested in doing so. What happens to that now?
Well, I think for Hillary's sake, there needs to be an investigation, because if she's as innocent as she says, she needs to be exonerated. The only way that happens is with a full investigation. But there has been so many things about what she did. I mean, even this recent revelation about her maid had access to the server, typed out things on her computer. Look, I mean, the smell of this is so bad, it takes a hazmat team to just walk into the evidence. But if she's innocent, let's prove it. If, however, that she has done some things that violated national security, she lied to Congress.
But Comey already said no. He already said no. Didn't we already go through this?
No, we really didn't. What he said was she didn't have any intent, but intent isn't part of the law. But am I suggesting that I would like to see her incarcerated? Absolutely not. I don't think anything would be served. But I do
think that would blow a little of the goodwill? That would blow some of the goodwill that Trump goes into office with? I mean, he's trying to pull more people into the tent. I mean, the Republicans might love it, but those independents and Democrats wouldn't.
This isn't a political witch hunt, Megyn. Either there's a rule of law or not. And if Hillary Clinton doesn't have to play by the rules that the rest of us have to play by, that General Cartwright played and that 20-year-old kid who took an iPhone photo of a sub, if those people are going to prison, then we've got an issue. That's what we've got to find out.
Great to see you, Gov.
Good to see you.
Joining us now with more, Democratic strategist and Clinton confidant Richard Socarides. He was also a senior White House advisor under President Bill Clinton. Richard,
Megyn,
you see his point.
Megyn, I want to say first, congratulations on the book. I'm excited to read it.
Thank you very much. Settle for more.
Settle for more. I want to settle for more. I want to be on the show more.
There's the attitude. That's what I'm talking about. Be better. Do better.
Excellent.
Settle for more.
I'm trying. I'm going to try
All right, let's see
in
what you
this
got.
interview.
Should she be prosecuted? What political capital must the Republicans expend if they choose to go that way?
Well, listen, I think the most important point here is that she's been cleared not once but twice by the FBI director, a Republican FBI director. So if you want to, if people want to prosecute her, I don't know what they want to prosecute her for. But I think that any attempt to continue this, to continue any kind of investigation is really an overreach and would backfire against the Republicans.
The conventional wisdom is that if it hadn't been Loretta Lynch, but it had been a Republican attorney general, that there may have been a different result, even under Jim Comey, who's supposed to be independent. Do you think the Republicans might take the chance and find out whether that's true?
Well, I don't think so, because I think that the way this works is that the FBI director, the FBI investigates and the FBI director makes a recommendation
but it's up
to
the
Attorney
AG.
General.
And if the AG is Ted Cruz, I bet you he might see it differently.
Yeah, but the AG, no matter who the AG is never really in a position to overrule the FBI director. Now, if the FBI director came into the AG and said, well, on the one hand, on the other hand, maybe that would be a different thing. But Mr. Comey, a Republican who was certainly no fan of Hillary Clinton's, said that there's no set of circumstances under which a reasonable prosecutor would prosecute this. So I think we have to take him at his word.
But the prosecutor is the AG, not the FBI director. And so you never know if Ted Cruz gets in there and says, I think it looks like a pretty good case. Things could get interesting, although we're ahead of our skis on Ted Cruz. This is just one report, unconfirmed.
Yeah,
great to see you, Richard. So far,
you
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling like it was more. It was excellent. Great to see you tonight. So still ahead, reports of violent attacks spiking since the election. So we asked Trace Gallagher to investigate, and the results he found are next.